Gene Hackman is one of Hollywood's great screen legends. His decades-spanning career has included a huge variety of roles, movies, and awards. He's won 2 Oscars, 4 Golden Globes, and much more. In the late 60s and early 70s, he went from a working actor to a bona fide star with 2 Academy Award nominations and 1 win. The nominations were for his work in Bonnie and Clyde in 1968 and 1971's I Never Sang for My Father. 71 also saw him in the role that came to define his stellar career, acting as Popeye Doyle in the classic police movie The French Connection. He won his first Oscar for that performance, and from that moment he was revered as one of the finest actors of his generation. He continued acting in memorable roles and movies for the next several decades, only further cementing his status as an icon. But in 2004, in his 70s, he decided to hang it up. He's been enjoying his retirement and pursuing other creative endeavors. Recently, he was spotted in Santa Fe, New Mexico, where he lives, in a somewhat surprising vehicle choice. So, join Facts First as we present, at 93 years old, this is the car Gene Hackman drives. Gene and his truck. For residents of Santa Fe, New Mexico, the sight of a 93-year-old man popping into a gas station for a fill-up and a bite is probably not that uncommon. It's a popular spot to retire to, and it's a part of the country where trucks are popular. But they might be surprised when they discover the person in question is a legendary Hollywood star. Recently, Gene Hackman was spotted in Santa Fe as he pulled up in a Toyota Tundra. The actor looked fit, though the years have meant his body looks a lot more frail than perhaps when we saw him last. But he moved around quite well for someone in their mid-90s, and he certainly seems to be fully with it, and at least somewhat active. Photos of the spotting quickly moved around social media, not because they were controversial in the slightest, but because of the love and adoration millions of fans have had for the longtime Hollywood star. When he stopped acting a couple decades ago, ending his run of decades of work with a comedy alongside Ray Romano, 2004's Welcome to Mooseport, fans all over were left with the sadness of his retirement. Hackman's gravitas, charisma, and acting prowess always made movies better, so the fact that we haven't seen him on a screen in nearly 20 years is a bummer. Yet it was his choice to continue living out of the Hollywood spotlight, and we can respect that. It seems that in life, just as with many of his roles, Gene Hackman does what he wants to do. Hackman's truck. Perhaps the most intriguing part of seeing Hackman out and about in Santa Fe, apart from the fact that he hadn't been photographed in public for a while, was his vehicle of choice. Hackman went for a classic Toyota Tundra. There have been 3 different generations of that truck, and this was from its 3rd. It was a double cab version that he'd done some customizations to. For the truck enthusiasts among you, here are some specs. His truck has a 5.7-liter V8 engine with rear-wheel drive. It has a power output of 375 horsepower, and it was fitted with the TRD 4x4 off-road package. That includes privacy glass for the rear doors, TRD badging, and an engine skid plate. It also includes 18-inch TRD off-road alloy wheels and Bilstein shock absorbers. He also had a truck cap added on from ARE. Fighting after a fender bender. You'd think anyone unlucky enough to get into a car accident with a legendary tough guy actor would know better than to start any kind of altercation. That's especially true given the fact that Hackman is a former Marine, so he knows his way around hand-to-hand combat. At the same time, you'd also assume anyone who got in a fender bender with a Hollywood legend would recognize him, get kind of excited, and maybe be super nice. That wasn't the case in 2001 when Gene got into an accident on Sunset Boulevard in Hollywood. The accident happened when, according to Hackman's lawyer, a man cut him off in traffic, and Gene was unable to stop in time to avoid hitting him. So Gene rear-ended the Volvo station wagon, causing slight damage. The other driver was clearly not happy and jumped out of his car to confront Hackman. Then he either didn't recognize Hackman, or he did and didn't care, because the man started getting into a war of words with the legend. Then, allegedly, he used an anti-gay epithet, prompting the actor to slug him several times in the face. And given at the time Gene was 71, it's impressive he was still willing and able to throw down. Apparently, Hackman got several punches in before the other guy gave him a knee to the groin, which knocked Hackman to the ground. When it was all over, neither driver suffered too much more than bruised egos, and their cars were generally both in fine shape. So the two ended up just driving away without filing police reports or looking to press charges. Hackman's reps said the actor found the whole thing amusing more than anything. They pointed out that while Gene is generally gentle and kind, his rough-around-the-edges persona and Marine training meant you still don't want to mess with him. Gene rolled a car. Hackman's passion for driving extended beyond his roles in movies. For example, in 1986, he competed in a 6-hour-long endurance race. The competition happened at Sears Point International Raceway, a spot in Sonoma in Northern California. At the time, Hackman was a 55-year-old and was competing in an Audi Quattro he owned. Unfortunately, the car rolled on him after the brakes locked up partway through the race. It popped over onto its top, effectively ending his participation. Gene wasn't hurt in the accident, though likely pretty disappointed at having to drop out of the race midway through. He even joked with reporters about it afterwards, remarking at that moment he would have liked to have had a stunt driver. Gene's retirement. Gene's retirement from acting wasn't anything big and ceremonial, but that shouldn't be surprising knowing the legendary actor's demeanor. Instead, after the release of Welcome to Mooseport in 2004, where he plays a former president running for mayor of a local town against Ray Romano's character, he appeared on Larry King's show for an interview. During the interview, Hackman admitted he didn't have any projects lined up. He also speculated that perhaps his acting career was over. A few years later, in 2008, Hackman was interviewed during the release for one of his books. It was then he finally confirmed he'd officially retired. In 2011, GQ interviewed him and asked if there were any scenarios that would prompt him to come out of retirement. He entertained the question, noting that if it was a film that could be shot in his own house and one that wouldn't really disturb anything in the house, then he'd maybe do it. It also could involve 1 or 2 people max. Given that the interview was more than a decade ago, it's clear either Hackman was fully kidding or no one decided to take him up on the offer. He did briefly come out of retirement in a way to add his voice as narrator for 2 documentaries. They were both about the Marine Corps, the branch that Hackman clearly has high regard for, having served in. In 2016, he narrated The Unknown Flag Raiser of Iwo Jima, and in 2017, he narrated We the Marines. But he hasn't gone back on his decision not to act since his final movie in 2004. Hackman's life since retirement. Much of Gene's time since retiring from acting has been spent with his family, though he's also had a successful writing career as well. He got his start by co-authoring 3 books with Daniel Lenihan, an undersea archaeologist. One was released before his retirement, a sea-based historical adventure novel called Wake of the Perdido Star. That one came out in 1999. He also released a book the same year as his final movie. That one was called Justice for None, and it revolved around a murder that took place in the Depression era. Finally, he released Escape from Andersonville in 2008, which told the tale of an Old West prison escape. After those 3 releases, Hackman decided to try out some writing on his own. He released Payback at Morning Peak in 2011, a revenge and love novel set in the Old West. Since then, he's only released one more novel, 2013's Pursuit. In perhaps a nod to the role in The French Connection that made him a household name and won him his first Oscar, the novel is a police thriller. Now it's time to hear from you. Are you surprised Gene Hackman retired so early? And are you surprised by his choice of vehicle? Let us know in the comments section below.